What is going on, everybody? My name is Jared. Welcome back to the madprops channel. In this episode, we're going to go over priming and painting and all the stuff that's involved with prepping and mixing the primer and paint and how I went about applying it and rolling and tipping and all that kind of good stuff. So, what you just saw me doing there in the beginning was I actually went back with a kind of a low angle raking light to help me kind of spot any imperfections that were kind of hard to see by the naked eye. So what happens when you take that light at a low angle like that is it really helps you visualize, or not visualize, actually see the defects. So I was there sharp with a Sharpie circling all those little issues. So what I found out was I had a whole lot more issues than I thought. So basically I had to go back with some more fairing compound, fill all those in, more sanding, vacuum it out. And then what I had to do was I get to finally prepping the hole, which means I had to wipe the whole thing down with, first I did acetone, and then, actually no, that's all I did. I just did acetone before I did the primer. After the primer and paint were down, I didn't want to use acetone anymore because I didn't know if it was going to be compatible with the paint. So at that point I switched over to using the 333 primer, which is the thinner, brushing thinner that Interlux recommends to use with their paint and primer. So without further ado, I don't want to give it all away, so let's get to it. Start off with the prepping for the primer and mixing it up and everything, and here we go. Man, that stuff stinks. Acetone it'll get you. Forgot how bad that stuff is. So, take you over here and show you. The boat is officially wiped down with acetone. See, basically looks the same. I'm sure you can't tell on the camera, but that feels good because that means it's pretty much ready to go. So I know we can only thin this 10%, and the top coat I think you can do 15. I'll have to double check that. But so this is the Interlux pre-coat primer. So this is recommended for, well, so I'll tell you what happened with me. So this pre-coat primer is recommended for obviously a primer layer before the paint goes on. But if you read the can and the technical data sheet, it says you don't need to use it on new fiberglass or clean fiberglass, which, I mean, you could argue that this is. It's all a reconstructed deck, new fiberglass, new fairing compound, all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's, by the definition, I would say it's pretty new and clean fiberglass, but I was kind of hesitant about that, so I ended up calling the technical support for Interlux. Just bump my head on that. And they recommended I use it. Now, whether or not that's because they're just trying to sell more, I don't know, but it's not that expensive, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And just a heads up, if you decide to go with this paint brand, they have two different primers that are compatible with the Brightside paint, and this is also compatible with another few lines of their paint, but they have a gray primer and a white primer. So you just want to go ahead and not match, but if you're going to do a dark color, obviously you don't want to use a white primer, just harder to hide. So get the one that works for your situation better. Since I'm doing an off-white, obviously white primer is going to be the closest thing. So I'm going to get everything I need here, get my rollers out. I'm not going to tip the primer, I'm just going to roll it out because I'm going to have to sand it anyway. So just get some rollers, some trays, got my mixing cups here. Going to get this measured out. Probably going to start out with, so this is what, almost a liter. So I'll probably start with like a quarter of a liter and see how far that gets me. So roughly 8 ounces. With the thinner, I'm thinking that'll go pretty far, but we'll have to wait and see. This isn't nearly as thick as gel coat, so you should get a lot more coverage out of this than you do gel. So let me measure that out and get everything ready and start rolling it and see how far it gets us. Yeah, that's it. Be right back. So I gotta be totally honest with you guys. This thing was absolutely kicking my butt. I tried prying it off with a screwdriver, swearing at it, kicking it, you name it. Ended up what was working out the best actually was these tin snips. There's gotta be a secret out there to get these things off, but I didn't Google it, so made it work. So since this stuff is polyurethane based, you just want to make sure you give it a good stir. It has a tendency to separate, and there's a lot of solids in the bottom of this stuff. So just make sure you mix it well. And I ended up thinning this just under 10%. I originally poured out 10% of the thinner in this measuring cup here, but after I started to pour it in, I realized there's no reason to put in the max amount. So I ended up putting in about 6 or 7% roughly. My God, why does everything on rebuilding a boat have to smell so bad? If something has the definition of smelling flammable, I'm pretty sure it's this paint. I don't know. Thinner smells like straight kerosene or something. Maybe it is. I don't know. Should look that up. Anyway, primer is down, at least the first coat. I ended up using almost exactly 16 ounces. So the first one made it about halfway back, and then I had to come out and refill and make another one. So, and both of them, those were 8 ounces. So 8 ounces before the thinner, I guess I should say. So a little bit over once the thinner was added. Sorry, can't think straight, probably all these fumes. It went on pretty thin, which is what I expected, but I'm really not looking for coverage so much with this primer as much as I am just the adhesion properties. So I'm going to sand it tomorrow night after it gets cured for, I think it's 16 hours. I'm going to see what it looks like if I sand through in any of the spots. I mean, you can tell it definitely didn't get full coverage, but I'm actually pretty happy with it. So per the instructions, I'll sand it after 16 hours, see what it looks like. If there's any other spots that need to get touched up, I will. And if it's a lot of spots, then I'll just end up putting a whole nother coat on, because I have enough. I only used about half the can, so I should have enough to do a full second coat if need be. So we will see after it cures and I get it sanded tomorrow. So it's going to do it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Welcome back, guys. It is officially painting time. So in the last clip there, you saw me rolling out the second coat of primer, I think. It's actually a few days later, so I'm trying to remember. But second coat of primer is down, and off camera I went back and sanded with 220 grit. Hold on a second. There we go. Sanded with 220 grit and went back through and vacuumed it all up and wiped everything down with the 333 brushing thinner. So the hull is prepped. This was a couple days ago, but the garage has been closed up, so I'm assuming there's not any inordinate amount of dust that's settled on this since then, so I'm assuming it's ready to go. So next step is going to be, I kind of actually was going back and forth on this. Hold on. So I was actually going back and forth on what I was going to do here. My original plan was actually to cover the entire thing with one coat of paint and then go back and tape off everything and do the non-skid and all that. But then the more I thought about it, I realized that's actually a huge waste of paint because there's really no reason to put any under the first layer non-skid. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm actually going to go around all of the spots that are not going to get non-skid, so non-skid, the smooth areas, and I'm going to roll and tip the first coat of paint. Then tomorrow, once that's dry, hopefully, should be sandable within like 16 hours. So tomorrow, once it's dry, I'm going to go back and then I'll tape out the non-skid areas, roll out the paint, and go apply the non-skid. And then from there on out, I can just do full coats everywhere. So I'm thinking for now I'm going to end up with 3 coats. That's at least the plan. We'll see how it goes after the second coat. Maybe that's enough coverage on the non-skid, but just have to wait and see. So after I got that second coat of primer down, I went back and sanded with 220 and wiped everything up with the 333 brushing thinner. Just used that because it's a compatible solvent. Use that to wipe up all the dust till the rags came off pretty clean. And it's actually been sitting for a few days, but the garage has been kind of closed up, so I'm not worried about much of dust kind of floating around and resettling. So now it's time. I'm going to get suited up here, get everything I need. Foam rollers, the brush. Actually, let me show you what I'm using. Alright, so just using standard 4-inch frame roller handle, J hand, whatever you call these things, paint roller handle. Then for the rollers, I'm actually going to use this smooth door and cabinet high density foam roller. The key here is you want to get the highest density foam you can because that'll leave less air bubbles behind. So anything's pretty much going to work fine with this Interlux anyway because you're going to go back and tip it, which is basically what's popping all those bubbles. But I'm doing this. I think you'd even be fine to use like a 1/4-inch nap roller, but you don't want to go much more than that because you're just making more work for yourself. But this stuff does level out pretty good. And then the key is to use a good brush. At least I'm told. I'm kind of new to the rolling and tipping thing, so I got a Worcester brand from Home Depot or something, but it was a China bristle brush, so it's a natural bristle and pretty good size, and I don't know what I'm doing. So that's what I'm going to use. So one thing worth mentioning is, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I did make kind of a test panel to mess around with this stuff on. So I laid up like 2 layers of 1708 on top of a piece of thin plywood. And then I went back and put a coat of gel coat on it just to kind of help fill in the weave of the glass, and then sanded it all down. And I didn't put a coat of primer on here. I basically just went right on with the first coat of paint. And what I found was, I had read you want to get some of the brushing thinner into your tipping brush. You don't want to use it totally dry. So what I did was poured some in a mixing cup and then kind of dabbed it in there. But what happened is this actually soaked up way more thinner than I thought. And when I went back to tip that first coat, when I was dragging the brush along, it was actually just letting a bunch of that thinner flow out into the paint. And it was basically ruining it. It was like wrinkling up and it looked absolutely horrendous. So the next night I went back and just kind of gave this a quick sanding. I didn't do a very good job. But then my second coat of paint, I got as much thinner out of the brush as I could. So it's still in there, but it's basically, I took a rag and squeezed it as hard as I could and kind of like just blotted out as much thinner as I could. And it's still in here. This brush really holds the thinner. I don't know if you can see that, but it's actually made that spot dark because there's still thinner in there from like 3 nights ago. So after I got all that thinner back out, the second coat went way better. So just dragging this brush across turned out a lot nicer. Now there's still some bubbles and imperfections in here, but most of what we're seeing, I don't know if you can even see that on the camera, but it's got a really nice shine, but you can see some imperfections, and most of what that is the actual pits and stuff that I never sanded out of the glass, and then also some of that wrinkling right here from the previous layer of paint that didn't get sanded out. And then in addition to that, you can actually see just consistent strips going this way, which I think is actually the I think it's nylon, the binder in the 1708 that actually holds the fibers. So it's ideally I would have put a layer of CSM over top of this, then gel coat, and then even some fairing compound, but that was not really the intent here. It was just to get the technique down, which I think I did. And then the other key with this piece is going to be, I'll be able to use this to test out the non-skid. I'm just going to do a really small patch because I don't have a ton of non-skid material. I'm hoping I have enough. I just got one of the, I think it's pint containers of the soft sand rubber. So, all right, enough talking. I'm going to get everything I need ready, pour out the paint in the mixing cups, and head over and start painting. Well, it just shot me showing you how to mix the paint and measure everything out, but it's lost. So I'm just going to give a quick recap. I'm not going to do it again because I don't need that much paint. So what I did was I took my Interlux Brightsides, hashtag not sponsored. Mixed it up. Whoa, almost dropped it. Mixed it up really well, so when you open it up, even after sitting for 10 to 15 minutes, it separates. So when you take it off, you got to make sure you take the lid off. You got to make sure you stir it real well. And after that was done, I poured it into a fresh, clean mixing cup, and I put 12 ounces in here. 12 ounces is an arbitrary number in terms of what you're doing, but in terms of what I'm doing, I recall from the primer, I ended up using about 8 ounces and then another 8 ounces to get one coat. So basically 16 ounces did an entire coat on the boat. So I don't know if this is going to have the same amount of coverage as that, but to play it safe, I went with 12, so somewhere in between. And again, I'm only doing the areas that are smooth here, so I shouldn't need 16 because I'm not doing the whole thing. So I'm doing 12 ounces here, got it mixed up, and I put in roughly 5% of the brushing thinner, the 333 Interlux brushing thinner. It's a little less than 5%. You can mix up to 10, but I've heard many people online say that they don't even put the thinner in. So I wanted to add a little bit to give me some more of the self-leveling property, since I've never done this rolling and tipping thing before, so I can use all the help I can get. So got my paint here with the thinner in it. Got my roller and frame here and gloves on. Got my little disposable foot cover thingers. These are great. You guys should definitely buy these on Amazon. I got like pack out 100 for like 10 cents or something. I don't know. It wasn't that cheap, but it's ridiculous. So got everything I need. I'm going to head up to the boat and start rolling tipping. See you up there. All right. Here goes nothing. Man, I'm more nervous than doing the gel coat. This is the money surface. Alright, so from what I've seen, the key here is not too much paint. So I'm gonna basically, and that's the big benefit of the foam roller, is it doesn't really get loaded with paint. It's just kind of whatever's on the surface. Whereas if you have a nap roller, it kind of absorbs a lot of the paint into the roller itself. So, here we go. I'm just gonna work kind of a small area at a time because I don't want the paint to start to set up before I get a chance to tip it. So I'm just gonna kind of do this front left quarter, tip it, and then move on. keys here is to kind of just get the paint on the area that it needs to go and just kind of stay away from it until you're going to tip it. And I think part of the reason for that is once the thinner or solvent starts to evaporate out of it, you're going to lose that self-leveling quality. And I think when you disturb it and roll it around a lot, you make that solvent evaporate quicker. So you just kind of want to get the paint in the spots that it's got to go and just kind of be done with that spot until you roll it or until you tip it off. And then after you tip it off, then you just kind of stay away from it. So that seemed to have worked pretty well there. So what I'm doing is just holding this brush at about a 45-degree angle. And you're not really doing putting any pressure on it. It's kind of just the weight of the brush. And just nice, long, even strokes. And if you have to come down in an area, just kind of ease in. Just kind of come down in a gentle arc. Don't push down and then start. I'm going to come down gentle and lift gentle. Okay. Moving on. In this area up here, it's kind of a tough area to work in with the cap in place. Ideally, I'd have access to all this stuff, but I don't. So you just kind of get it the best you can. And then I'm actually going to be going back with a piece of trim to go under the fiberglass there, so that'll kind of help hide any of the spots that don't look great. One thing I forgot to mention is, and I couldn't really do this in the area I just did, but in these bigger sections like this, you kind of want to get in the habit of rolling in one direction and then tipping in the opposite. So, and I don't mean forwards then backwards, but so rolling, you want to roll this vertically and then tip it horizontally. And you could do it the other direction, but you kind of want to be able to make the longest continuous strokes with your tipping brush. So in this case, tipping it horizontally makes more sense. Alright guys, I think I'm actually going to wrap this one up here. I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to make this a two-parter, I think. The priming and painting of the first coat, I mean, I think there's enough detail in there that you guys probably don't want me to turn this into like a 50-minute video. So, the first coat of paint is down. Everything looks awesome. Let me take you over and give you a quick peek. Again, probably can't tell from there, but I am happy. So, first coat down, well, first coat around the smooth spots is down, and the next step is going to be to get in there and scuff up that paint once it's dry with some 320 grit sandpaper, knock down any nibs or any high spots or anything like that. And then it's going to be time to lay out the tape for the non-skid. Put down a coat of paint, apply the non-skid, go over that. It's going to turn into too much because I think this is one of those areas where a lot of people want the detail. You don't want to just see me doing stuff, you want me to explain it and show you how it's going. So, I think I'm going to end this one here. Again, sorry to leave you hanging, but I don't want this video to get out of control long. So, I will see you guys on the next one, and I'll cover what I just talked about. Thanks for checking this one out, guys. Hopefully you find this helpful if you're repairing your boat and doing some paint. It's good info to have. So don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, and like this video because it does help in the searches and all that kind of stuff. And share with anybody that you might think could find this helpful. A lot of people are painting their boats and have questions, so hopefully they can get something out of this. So, till next time, I will see you guys later, and have a good week. Bye.